My name is Arthur Oneil. I'm 26. I'm French originally, been living in London for 6 years. I came in London 6 years ago to do my master of brand strategy at Sup de Pub. I essentially did the first year of the Sup de Pub 4 master, which only lasted a year. And after that, I got an internship in a digital agency for about 4 months, looking after Avis. And then after that, I went to work for Starcom for 4.5 years, where I looked after Samsung, media planning, buying across EMEA, and then looked after Airbnb and McCormick, which is Ducros in France, for about 2.5 years, so looking after all the media strategy across EMEA for about 2.5 years. And for the last 6 months, I have been at a company called Protein. It's an agency that does things slightly differently, and I look after Converse, digital media, influencer content across Europe again. So I've been asked today by Sup de Pub to do a masterclass about the UK media landscape. So quite interesting to know that media is about people, and this is what the whole masterclass was about today. Is just remember that it doesn't matter if you're talking about TV or out of home or print or digital. It all comes back to media is a mean to connect with people. And so the way I approached this with the students was going through key cultural UK icons, items, events that showcase how media influences people and people influences media. So a good example of that is Hillsborough disaster in the 1980s. 96 people died in Liverpool because of police failure, and the Sun, the newspaper The Sun, essentially blamed wrongly, based on false facts, supporters of being really bad and having urinated on people and having kicked police people. And what happened after that is the Sun was banned, essentially, and boycotted, really, by Liverpoolians. And because of that, the Sun had a massive issue in becoming the biggest newspaper in the UK. So that's one fact, and we went through a lot of events that goes from the royal family, and the first documentary that was aired in BBC. It's one of the most watched TV show in the UK, or EastEnders, and the famous night where Angie got dumped. And all of these events and how they really relate back to, we need to understand the culture of a country and how that is communicated through media to make sure that advertising and marketing is done in the right way, so that we avoid making mistakes like trying to do advertising with the Sun in Liverpool, or do our job really well and trying to find new ways like native advertising that's growing and digital to avoid ad blockers and things like that. In order for you to understand how impactful a media campaign, you have to understand the type of TV shows or the type of content that is broadcasted in order to make the right correlation between the two. So a great example is the one he wears Essex, one of the stars called Joey Essex. And he was recently used by Copper Soup, which is just a powder soup product, for an advertising, and it's using the fact that Essex people can be regarded as being a bit thick, and it made a really smart kind of correlation between the fact that they're thick/stupid to promote that. And understanding how media, like the only way is Essex, which is just another multiple show that you can access in the UK, and why that guy is so famous and is being used to rejuvenate the brand is really important. So that's one aspect. Another one is let's talk about, for example, pirate radios. So pirate radios were created in 1964, and the first one was Radio Caroline. And for 3 years, pirate radios grew, and by the end of 1967, there was about 10 of them, and they drove about £2 million in advertising revenue, and they were pirate radio that was illegal, but even governmental entities were paying advertising to have that in there. And what happened is in 1967, the government passed a new law to forbid essentially pirate radios which were broadcasting from British seas and landscape. And they restructured the BBC, and from that they created BBC Radio 1, 2, 3 and 4, which are some of the most consumed radios nowadays. So understanding these little factors shows how important it is to understand the UK culture. And in fact, these days, pirate radios have evolved into a more kind of chav-orientated phenomenon. There's about 150 pirate radios that are run out of Southwark, Stoke Newington and other areas of London, which are more driven by a different kind of population. At the time, it was more pop music, rock and roll, and now this is more about grime music, garage music, and these kind of things. So, understanding the subtlety and how media is evolving and it actually is being driven by people, is impacting people's life, then gets you to understand as a marketer what you should or should not be doing. Is there a sort of a pirate radio type of media these days? I think digital, if you look at digital, this is where you'll find the answer to that question. We are constantly evolving what we can do or not on digital. It's an infinite canvas where we can do pretty much everything. We've got display ads, we've got paid social banners, and more and more popping up are more native, what's called native ways of doing advertising, because advertisers want to be a bit more subtle. People are way more aware of advertising and what it entails and the messages that are being driven to them. So as part of my job, I work a lot with influencers and publishers such as Vice, GQ, or big entities who work on sponsored content and native content. So essentially we provide them with assets, we provide them with content, a brief, a product, and they then do the job of taking it and making the story about their own story about that product. And they can use what we call influencers, so people who have either a following on social media or they have a big voice heard within a certain community. Usually is what influencer entail. And that for me is probably the new type of pirate media, in the sense that we are using ways that are not as obvious, but are really wanted and really desired by people. Nowadays, because of the whole celebrity culture that we live in, that's massively driven by the US, people want to know about celebrities, about people that they respect and they see as very kind of key in their decision for, I don't know, their lifestyle or their day-to-day, the way they dress and things like that. So it's a way of saying, we found something that everyone wants to know about, which is kind of what pirate radios at the time, people wanted to listen to pop music and rock and roll, and we find a way to make it a more open access. Different structure, but I guess to a certain extent, same output. Any advice for Sup de Pub students who wants to stay in the UK or work in the UK? Be bold and be courageous. The UK is a very meritocratic country, and working in the UK, you'll always be rewarded for doing a good job. And I think we as French people have an advantage in that English people don't have as much professional training as UK people do, and we don't have as much. They don't have as much internship experience as we do, and it's a real asset when you go for a job, because you're already to a certain degree prepared for a job that people who in the UK who have been to university or have a master haven't really had. I think the other thing as well is be curious. Living in another country, there are so many things that people don't know, and it's understanding a life. Essentially, it's trying to understand a different culture, a different country. I've been here for 6 years, and I'm still mesmerized every day by the amount of things that I discover and by the delight that this country has to offer. So I'd say be curious, read newspaper, watch TV shows, go visit, even Legoland, understand what that is, and by being so curious in the way you'll be here during your experience, you'll get to understand the country more and why it's such a great country and why it offers so many opportunities, especially in marketing, being one of the key global pool that you have now in the world.